Welcome to the podcast where Aunty Donna, which is, I guess, a theatre company, more than at its essence, is a theatre company who makes web content to promote their live theatre. Our model is the Melbourne Theatre Company, but we are skewed towards comedy. If we are skewed towards anything, we are skewed towards comedy. But we do a lot of dark stuff. We do a lot of boundary pushing. We do a lot of... and some plays for the oldies as well. Today, we're going to be talking with our guest. Our guest today is a known writer, performer with Australian comedy theatre company, Aunty Donna. He is a graduate of the Ballarat University Arts Academy. He is a writer known for his work on ABC series Why Are You Like This, as well as his other illustrious roles on stage and screen. Mark, thank you for joining us today.
It's so great to be here, Broden, from Aunty Donna, with, of course, Zach.
Yes, I'm sort of functioning in this interview setting, sort of like Hannah Gadsby on in Gordon Street Tonight, or who was the guy behind the bar on the footy show?
Trevor Marmalade.
Barman Bill from... That's the NRL footy show, Broden. Barman Bill. I'm sort of... That's my function, I suppose, until we get over this bit. So I'll just be, interjecting, throwing in witticisms, that sort of thing.
I'd love to hear a witticism right now.
Doesn't work like that, man. Does not work like that at all. I can't. I'm not your fucking dancing.
Don't panic. Dude, it's all right. Relax. You don't have to oh my God. Let's
Mark, I want to talk today about a bit of comedy that you grew up with that inspires you. We've done that the last 3 months.
We have.
1 month we talked to Zach. We talked to Zach about Sean McAuliffe. Who is a comedian from Australia. When I went to school, there was a boy called Sean, and he had all the pornos. So we called him Porno Shauno.
Porno Shauno.
His name was Porno Shauno, if you're listening.
His name was David at my school, and he would come to school. He would print out pornography on his inkjet printer. His colour inkjet printer, put them in like a plastic display folder. You know the ones you would put a project in when you were done. Yeah. And he would bring that to school, and we would look through it at lunchtime together. Not just me and him. It was a whole pack of us.
Was the boy with the pornos? Were they pornos? Digital pornos, print pornos. This is for both of you.
Celluloid.
Well, mine were images that he downloaded from the internet.
And then he printed them.
So
this is more of a question for Broden.
So he went on to become a publisher, potentially.
Was Porno Shauno, was he bringing
these were DVDs, burnt CDs.
So our porn guy, maybe this is a little earlier, I can't quite place it, but he would bring floppy disks of very, what's the word... pixely pornography. He would find the best images, download them, and put them on a floppy disk.
This is the world of the 2000s.
Yeah.
Now, Zach brought Sean McAuliffe. We talked about Sean McAuliffe.
Yeah.
Who is a big fan of us.
I know, it's nuts.
Where he thinks we're awesome because we're fucking incredible. Now, I talked about South Park, Trey Parker, Matt Stone.
Mm-hmm.
And this week,
Stone month stuff.
For our lucky Aunty Donna Club people, we're going to see what Mark's bringing today. And I've got a feeling it's going to be something pretty special.
You know what it is. I told you what it was going to be last week.
Jim Carrey.
I do. Yeah. I just want to say, before we talk about Jim Carrey, I don't know if this is going to be too much of a divergent, but my porno guy at my school was called...
Stop talking about the porno guys.
No, I was not going to, but it's a coincidence because my porno guy is called Porno Trey Parker and Matt Stone.
Oh.
That was his name.
That was his name, so it does relate.
Yeah.
No more talk about the porno guys. All right?
No, talk about Jim Carrey for Mark.
There was also... I do just want to say, though, that there was also my uncle. You guys know my uncle showed me a lot of porn.
We don't have to do the porno bag.
Well, that was a big bag of VHS pornos that he had. But also, the one that you don't know was about his nephew, not related to me by blood, who had heaps of porn on his laptop. And one day he showed me a clip from the Avatar porno, which was people dressed up.
You have told me this.
Yeah, and the funny thing was that as they started to fuck, the more they were fucking, the blue body paint came off. And the illusion that they were aliens or of an alien species quickly disintegrated. You just saw two people painted blue fucking. It was quite full-on thing to see when
James Cameron had to invent the technology to make Avatar happen.
It's true.
And unless they were willing to make the same multi-million-dollar investment for the porno parody, that doesn't surprise me.
That's surprising. They could have invested in some higher quality body paint. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about
Is everyone done?
Yes.
Well, as the barman Bill, I might occasionally throw in an aside about pornos.
I'd ask if we, that's worst case scenario. Please keep it to Jim Carrey. Mark hasn't even been able to tell us who it's,
and do the build up. I was going to do a big build up.
Yeah. So can you just go through the process of that now?
Yeah, he's got like a 10-minute thing.
Yeah.
Who have you brought in?
Well, someone it might be
Jim
quite
Carrey.
surprising.
It's Jim Carrey.
It is
Shut
Jim
the fuck
Carrey.
up, man.
It is Jim Carrey.
Sorry. No, go. I'll play along.
The reason I picked the maniac now known as Jim Carrey is because, I was quite inspired, Broden, by what you brought in last month when you were talking about something when you went back a little more. You went back a little further to when you were a wee Broden. By the way, there is footage of Broden Kelly of when he's about 14, maybe 15. He's doing his school musical, and they interview him, and it is one of the most incredible things I've ever seen because he looks so young. He looks like a baby boy version of the man Broden Kelly we all know. Yet his voice has not changed.
It's so funny.
His voice is as deep and as illustrious sounding as it is now, and it is the funniest thing I've ever seen. And sometimes I watch it without sound just to get an idea of what I think it could sound like. And then I watch it again with sound so that I'm constantly surprised by it. I just wanted to bring that up. But anyway.
So funny.
That's so
funny.
It's one of my favourite videos I've ever seen.
I don't know if I have that anymore.
Very surprising.
Can someone write down that as a sketch idea? Just that period where the voice is ahead of the person.
That voice is ahead of the body.
And it's just like a 13-year-old boy with just a man's voice.
It's a great video. You'll really enjoy it if you ever get to see it. I'm sure you won't.
It's probably the happiest I've ever been in Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Anyway,
who
was your person?
It's a bit of a surprise. I went, and you have to guess. I went right back. I tried to think of, because of what you said, Broden.
Zach's going to do a Matty Kazar. I can feel it coming.
He's going to do a Matty Kazar.
No, I'm writing down the voice sketch.
Good idea.
Because it's very funny and I don't want it to go away.
I wanted to go right back to, I was thinking, what was the first thing that I remembered ever truly understanding was funny, right? And that really made me genuinely be like, I laugh at this because I understand this. Because, I grew up watching The Simpsons. I loved The Simpsons. I grew up watching Seinfeld. I loved Seinfeld. Seinfeld's still one of my favorite shows and arguably one of the biggest influences.
And you love Friends as well, yeah?
No, I've said before in the past, not really a Friends fan. Not really my cup of tea.
Oh, okay.
No, I remember you saying
no.
It was Simpsons, Seinfeld, and Friends.
No.
And How I Met Your Mother.
No, you're teasing me saying
that.
No, you're teasing me.
But hey, I just want to say to any listeners, if you like Friends or How I Met Your Mother, no, what's the word here? No gatekeeping here. Go for it. Have fun.
We respect
you. And Mark loves it. I don't gatekeep Mark and his love of Friends. Sorry. Fuck. Do your 10 minutes. I'm just not going to talk for 10 minutes. Do your spiel. Do your spiel, please.
And the early films of Jim Carrey.
Oh, Jim Carrey.
It was Jim Carrey is who I was going for. Were the first things I ever truly understood were funny, and I remember so clearly, I wore out the VHS tape that we had of Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. I watched it so many times, just fucking back to back, and I still know that movie back to back. It's in my DNA. But his performance, his fucking, ridiculous, over the top, just bizarrely, like how it works. How he does what he does, and it doesn't come across as cringy, is phenomenal, and still doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But it was the first thing I remember being like, I understand this. The way his body moves and the way he's using his voice, like, made me laugh as a kid because I got it. I wasn't just laughing because it had a laugh track or there were rhythms that I understood, or it was because a cartoon and you're a kid, so you love cartoons. Simpsons and Seinfeld I came to understand and appreciate and love even more as an adult. But it's absolute Jim Carrey's comedic purity, I think, worked.
Yes.
Multi-generationally.
Yes. And interlingually.
Yes.
Is that a word?
Yeah, absolutely.
Same as Mr. Bean.
Same as Mr. Bean. And I think even you could say that Donna possesses a little bit of that. We possess a little bit of that. We've done shows in Hong Kong to various degrees of success, but we've done shows in in places where I feel like we've been told.
Well, everything that's happening in Hong Kong is because of our shows.
It's because of our shows.
That's right. Hong Kong went to our show and went, hang on. No more.
No more of this.
But just that idea of big physicality and comedy without language. Not that we do mime, or not that, we do a little, we dabble. But, and especially what I really enjoy doing and what I like doing, things that come to mind is, the home run sketch from Big Boys and stuff. I feel like it all really does seed from that very early, seeing Jim Carrey as a comedic performer and going, I so understand this and I so like this. And there were 3 films in particular, which is absolutely crazy. There's a little bit of a trivia here that I'm sure most people know.
Jim Carrey.
But maybe no, about Jim Carrey and 3 films.
Oh, that was my answer.
Oh, that was your... Correct. We're talking about Jim Carrey. But Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, The Mask, which is just fucking so good, and so The Mask as a comic book movie is a really fascinating, interesting addition to the idea of comic book movies and the evolution of comic book movies through the 90s, but we'll get to that later. And that has nothing to do with what the fuck I'm talking about anyway. But anyway, and Dumb and Dumber all came out in 1994.
No, all 3 of them?
Yes.
Oh, no, but sorry. I'm not fucking around here, because you did tell us this last week. I thought 2 of them came out in the same year.
No, all 3 of them came out in 1994, right?
Fucking
and all
hell.
3 of them were massive fucking box office commercial successes. So Jim Carrey went from being a relatively unknown comedian that was on In Living Color and had little bit parts in bits and pieces and whatever, to being the biggest comedic movie star in the world in a year.
Sorry, that's amazing. I really was hoping with your list of 3 to be Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, The Mask, and of course Mr. Popper's Penguins.
All
Mr. Popper's Penguins.
Or whatever
Changed
the fuck
the
that
way.
character changed the way I view comedy forever.
But they're all just and he's so and another one that I loved as a kid as well that came out I think in 97, a couple of years later, was Liar Liar. They're just, and he's so the same but so different in every single one of those movies.
I think you only need to look at other films trying to do the same thing. It's the thing that I found on my other podcast. We watched one where John Leguizamo tried to do it. But like great comic actors in the 90s trying to do the Jim Carrey film. Like the best comic actors failing at it. Like it's this thing where I think people thought, oh, this is the new genre. But no one could do it to the level that he could do it. He is so singular. And I mean that quite like not to be, but he's so singular in his abilities and in what he can do. I can't think of anyone like him before or since, but he's very good.
I don't know where this is from, but I remember hearing that him being cast as Ace Ventura was a real risk thing, and that is his big breakthrough. And
really?
So it was a big risk to get him to do that, because before that, as you said, he was just a sketch performer and in living colour and little things here or there and a stand-up. He was happy to be a stand-up, apparently. But do you know what's interesting about Ace Ventura is it's funny you say there's a connection to us, and he's like a century level talent. Like I would say him and Robin Williams are probably the two best comedic performers
and Phoebe
of 100 years. And Phoebe, and
Joey.
Obviously, there's people in this group who'll go into bat for that. But are the two like just like those people who you go, well, that's on a level that is you can't achieve that.
No,
that's just something. But he apparently based the character. The reason I bring up the connection was he starts from a place of acting and he starts from a place of performance with that role. He based the entire role on a parrot or a bird. And if you look at it, he built it entirely. So it's like when we all went to uni. I don't know. I think you did it too, Mark. But our movement teacher in first year, one of the first tasks that we ever had to do was to go to a zoo and sit there for an entire day and watch an animal and then create a character based on that animal. And it was like, oh yeah, cool. And we all did it. But it's funny to see that like Ace Ventura's character is really funny, really heightened and far-fetched, but also really, I don't know, accessible, and people believe it. And the main thing with comedy is the worry is the bigger you get, the further you get away from connecting to people. That's the kind of challenge. Like the shows like The Office are all about having real relatable people who are very close to us and we can see and relate and understand to them. And we feel connected to Jim in The Office because he's looking at us and connecting with us at home. And for Jim Carrey to do a character that is so heightened, he's literally playing, never said, but he's playing a bird. He's playing a pet detective who is a bird, essentially. For that to be relatable and not necessarily relatable, but for that to connect with people is such a fucking feat. And it's because he's coming from a place of truth somewhere in himself. All the jokes he does, he understands and believes. And his instrument, which is his body and his voice and his facial expressions, are so in tune that he can think of something or believe something in himself and portray it whole bodily so well that it's him, Robin Williams, and a few other people are like the only people who can get close to that. Yeah. Do you know the other thing is I always find really funny, right? Is he like the first time he sort of broke through in any respect was on In Living Color, right? Which was a show that was built as a platform for like breaking through African American performers, and that the Wayans brothers are on that, who have gone on to become multi-billionaires, and Jamie Foxx. But it's crazy that in this show that the one white guy they brought in is like the biggest fucking performer ever. They also couldn't get on SNL and couldn't get on any other shows. And I love those stories when the people because there's so many success stories for SNL where if you go to SNL, you're a success. But you're like, Jim Carrey is the best comedic performer of the last 30 years. He's doing his own thing now. But at that, like, I was looking at that list you were talking about, and that run of movies he did is like historic. Where he started with Ace Ventura, went to The Mask, Dumb and Dumber, Batman Forever, Ace Ventura sequel, and then the Cable Guys. And people think about the Cable Guy being so bad. Not because it's crazy bad, it's a fine film. It's because it came after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like biggest films ever made.
Yeah,
It's
and
like,
still some of the best comedies that hold up today.
Yes.
You know, well, with the exception of the ending of Ace Ventura, but
Yes, without the transphobic film.
And there's a kind of a sexual assault scene in The Mask as well. That's a little bit.
It's sort of like
And of course, we can't forget in Batman Forever when he tries to kill someone, and that,
but it's sort of like with those. It's sort of like U2's Joshua Tree, like. The whole it's a bit off topic, but like in Joshua Tree, their whole mantra in the 80s was you do the best song first, the second best song second, and that was their order. Like there was no album order; they just do all the best songs in a row. So it means that Joshua Tree's first like 4 tracks are like game-changingly good, and then track 5. It's just like, oh, that album is shit after track 4, but it's like track 5 to 10 or whatever are still great tracks. It's just they're up against 4 of the greatest pop rock songs of the 80s. And it's the same with, that's just really funny. That's very evocative of that, how much hate the Cable Guy got. Purely because he got paid a lot of money and it wasn't as good as
it just wasn't as good.
Classics.
Yeah, it wasn't as good. That's what it was. So because it wasn't as good and everything else was so great, it's a piece of shit.
Dumb and Dumber is one of my favorite films of all time. I think it's peak career for a few people. I think it's peak career for the directors, the brothers. Is it the Farrelly brothers?
Oh.
Yeah, the Farrell. It's peak career for them. It's the best they ever got. Jeff Daniels, I don't know if it is. Maybe
it's the
it
best
is.
comedy he's ever done.
But he's like, that's the thing about Jeff Daniels. And I mean, that was the whole thing when they were casting that movie, apparently. They were like, let's put like a goofy comedy man who's just comedy and let's pair him with an incredible actor.
Yes.
And that was sort of the mantra for the casting of those twos. And it just worked brilliantly.
On that, I just want to say, sorry, Dustin Hoffman apparently rang up one or both of them after that film came out and said it's the best couple or love film of the year because of the relationship of those two characters, talking about coming back from a place of like working from truth and like and doing comedy from truth. He he considers that movie, and it's why if you read the script for that film, it's not a great script. I read it a while ago, and it's really like doesn't like some you can it could very easily have been just one of those shitty comedy films that comes out. Wow, really?
Yeah.
And you look at what Jim Carrey's doing on top of it and Jeff Daniels is doing on top of it and makes it work. It's
that's
incredible. There's a huge thing. I think it's also interesting because I've heard that before, the idea that they cast Jeff Daniels because he was a dramatic actor and he would be able to play the stupidness. And I think it's really interesting because like I literally just wrote a list that just then very quickly of like some of the best comedic actors I can think of right now or like contemporary. And it's like I wrote down Kristen Wiig, Steve Carell, Robin Williams, Jim Carrey. There's a lot more. But like what's really interesting is about all of them is they're all like incredible dramatic actors as well and very still dramatic actors. And then it's interesting because like they talk about, we cast Jeff Daniels across Jim Carrey because Jeff Daniels is a great dramatic actor. And it's like, but Jim Carrey is a great dramatic actor.
Yeah.
And I think I wonder if there's an element, I think a lot of people when they think of Jim Carrey doing his comedy of how like heightened it is and how like over the top and stupid it is. And whenever I think people try to do that, they go really busy and they go really like they're moving a lot and they're very like, you know, like loose and unfocused. But actually when you watch those 3 films in particular, he's very, very still and he's very, very centered and he's very, very like muscular in his performance. Like he doesn't flop about. He's very like deliberate. He's as deliberate as any dramatic actor. And I think that's almost of note. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's so... What he introduced to me, I think at a very, very young age, was the idea of making choices and not judging yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Like those two things that are key in comedy, right? Making very deliberate, specific choices And I think the only way he is able to be that big and that ridiculous and get away with it is because he just lacks any and all judgment of what he's doing. He just fucking goes for it. And it's just, again, I don't understand how it works because most of his movies, like Ace Ventura, The Mask, Dumb and Dumber, even Liar Liar to an extent, are about him being this ridiculous over-the-top character in a very grounded world. Like, the worlds are never heightened, really. It's always he's the one who's big and over-the-top. And, like, I mean, if you look at, like, has anyone seen the Mask sequel, The Son of Mars?
No.
Where they cast Jamie Kennedy, right, in the role of the Mask.
Worth a crack.
Worth a shot. Just doesn't work. And it's, like, so cringy and it's so hard to watch someone. And it's because I think he's judging everything he does, or he's like comparing himself to Jim. You can just see his brain working. And also another thing to be said about Jim Carrey and his work in The Mask is that cunt is wearing these giant fake teeth and sounds amazing, right? And then you watch The Son of Mask, where Jamie Kennedy has got the same fake teeth in and cannot speak. He's just inaudible. He just muscularly can't get around it, which comes back to that muscularness you were talking about, Zach. Everything is so specific
in control.
and particular.
I can't think of a single performer that is more like in control of every single muscle in their body, like face, voice, body. Like, he is so in control of everything.
Yeah, I want to talk to that.
Sure.
I was, when we were in Montreal a few years ago, I stayed back for a few days and went to a few things, and I got to see Jim Carrey in person. They gave him some sort of award for comedy or some shit, and he got
He's
up.
Not that good.
He got up and did this whole speech, and he's a very different person now, going through his own stuff and whatever. But like, he's not focused on comedy. He's doing his own thing, whatever. But it was just a couple of moments where he just turned on comedy for a second, and he is exactly what you're talking about, in control, because he just started doing comedic things, and it's fucking crazy to see that in person. Because he's an old man now; he's like maybe 60 or close to.
Yeah.
And but he very much is, and you're seeing in person was really special. This guy who is very in control of that instrument.
It's that thing. I think the thing I find really, really interesting is. And it's something I've always wanted to like dig into, because probably my favourite actors, if I were to list my properly favourite actors, every single one of them comes from comedy, is a comedic actor as well, or from comedy, or can do comedy. And I think part of that is like, what I find really interesting is the big comedic performers that work hard for the laugh. When they do drama, they go really, really still and really, really simple. And I think that's just really like interesting, this sort of knowledge of how much work comedy is versus how little work drama is, or how little, you have to work for a laugh, I think, or you have to really be in control for a laugh. Whereas with like drama, you can let people project onto you and stuff. And I think it's just really interesting. I find it fascinating. You literally look at all of the good, the actors I listed, like Robin Williams is an amazing example of it. How big he was when he did comedy and how small he was when he did drama. And I find that really, really interesting. I don't know. I wonder if there's any thoughts from you guys on that. Like what like where you think that comes from? Or
I think people, comedy, people, I don't know, just from experience, when people laugh when you yell, and if those guys were to play big dramatic roles where their fucking wife dies, or I don't think people would buy it from them.
That's interesting. I've never even considered that they can't access those places because they're already seen as comedic.
But you see it all the time, like, people associate subtlety with drama and big with comedy or musical.
But then it's what I find interesting about that, right? Is you look at someone like a Leonardo DiCaprio or who are the other big, like the guy that was in Nine and like Last.
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Daniel Day-Lewis, and how much they work for the drama, like how much they work for that dramatic moment, and then that like you put someone like a Steve Carell or a Robin Williams or a Kristen Wiig in that moment, and like they know that you can get the same thing by doing very little and letting the audience project onto it. Like how little you have to do. But also I guess that they have an access to something. I just find it really interesting how small and how simple and how effortless they are with drama.
Yeah, or particularly comedy, it's knowing when to go what. Like if you look at Will Ferrell, a lot of his performances he's doing subtlety, but subtlety only works in comedy, I think, when you've created an environment where people are like, this is funny, what this guy's doing is funny.
Yeah.
And then the less you do when there's that circumstance, the better almost. Do you know what I mean? And
because if you just walk in with that,
yeah,
there's not a lot of letting people know that this is, even though it might be very funny.
Will fully understands it now. He's probably considered at the moment to be like the highest grossing. He's the biggest comedian in the world for film acting now. Maybe him and Kevin Hart. And he fully understands that he's considered funny. When he walks into a room, people are expecting it from him, and so he knows now that his power is in just subtlety. It's interesting.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very, very true. Very true.
Yeah, and like I think because Mark, what would you say like when you talk about like him and like when you talk about these sorts of like those three films in particular, and like how it influences us, like do you think like there's a place like those sort of unapologetic whatever's funniest and stuff, like do you think there's like I don't know what my question is. I'm just curious, like, how you think that feeds into what we do and stuff.
Yeah, like, I mean, I don't know if it's one of those things where it's so deep and it's so the beginnings for me that like I know without question, watching those films as a kid, I was 6 when those movies came out, right? Watching those films as a kid gave me the permission to be funny. Like I saw them and I was like, that's how you be funny. And I was like, oh, I think I can do that, you know, or to a degree I can do that. And I remember moments in high school when I started like discovering that I was funny or that I could just go from like 0 to 100 in drama class and stuff. It's like when I think about those moments, I go, oh, I'm just doing Jim Carrey. I'm just trying to do this big, elasticy, fucking ridiculous, loud type of person. And that carried all the way through to me that when we started doing comedies, you know, in drama school, because I hadn't done fucking comedy, like, you know, like I had 3 years out of high school, and I think the last time I'd like done something funny or was in a funny play was when we did Noises Off for my year 12 theatre studies class, right? And then, and even then, I was just putting on like a British accent and trying to replicate the stage play that I'd seen, right? Like I wasn't doing anything kind of original or had found my voice or anything. It's like the DNA of it all, up until that show that the three of us did that you directed, Zach, it all fucking stems from when I was a kid and I watched that cunt being big and ridiculous and bold and stupid and it clicking with me and connecting with me and going, that's it. I'm going to do that. If I want to be funny, if funny is a thing, that's what it is.
Because it's,
you know?
true, isn't it? Like that, when you talk about that show, like I just remember like how much we self-censor all the time. It's this constant reminder, like how much a person is capable of performatively, and like how much, like in comedy, there's a lot of like coolness and you want to be cool. And like in theatre, there's a lot of like being good. And it's like, how funny you can be if you access that. What people think is 100% in terms of performance. What people think that big is overacting. It's like, but overacting is like being messy, you know. But like going big, how big you can go and still being centered, and how far you can push your body and your physicality and the character and the comedy and still being centered is like, it's amazing. And it's like when you actually let go of those those sort of restrictions and those. It's a very good point, and it's a good thing to think of and remind yourself of as a comedic performer, I think.
If I can talk to that for a second.
Yeah.
I remember when I went to acting school, I was like, well, like, I'm not... And thinking comedic people are Jim Carrey, and they're the people who have the skill to go and do that. And first year we had this crazy teacher who was a clown-trained man, Argentinian man who speaks in sort of, you know, code and in an abstract nature to try and get people to a place. Was kind of interesting. And I was playing, we put on a play, and I was playing the comedic role in this play, and I was playing it big, and he just kept telling me, do nothing, and so and beat me down to the place where I wasn't. I don't know if you don't understand this. I don't understand this. And I remember the first night walking out on stage, and the literally all I had to do in this to start this scene was like walk out and stare at someone, and it got a massive laugh. And I remember it was like a real box tick in my head. Like, wow, right. And then it was like, as soon as I heard that nothing got a laugh, it opened up this whole thing for me of understanding how comedy works and how you can make people laugh and what the relationship is with an audience and comedians. But
that's a great point. That's a very good point. Yeah.
I remember so vividly standing there and hearing people laughing, going, wow, that's not my understanding of how comedy works. And then that was the first step in a pathway towards what other great comedians do, where that's that place of truth. It's that place of the biggest performances come from a place of nothing and building on top of that in a film.
Do you remember Paul Hampton in first year? He had a thing which was the spinning top. It was the spinning top metaphor. So this is an acting teacher. It was a different acting teacher, not the crazy one that got fired because of some of the things he made us do on stage. Paul Hampton, he was an acting teacher, and he used the metaphor of the spinning top, and he said the more a spinning top moves, the more still it appears. And his whole metaphor was the bigger you go, the more still you have to be in the center, and vice versa. The smaller you go, the more you need happening in the middle. And it's like, I think that's just when I think of that metaphor and acting advice, I think all of my favorite actors do that. It's like that, like, and then just one other thing it reminds me of is apparently Steven Spielberg directed an episode of, this is one of my favorite quotes. He directed an episode of ER back when George Clooney was the lead in ER but wasn't in movies all that much. And apparently he just snapped at him one day, like he was directing him, and he snapped at him and he said, if you stop moving your head, you could be a movie star. I just think, like, because I want to do that a lot, and it's like, big doesn't necessarily mean not still. You know, big doesn't mean not centered. You can go big. Something I need to constantly remind myself of is you can go big, you can go really big, but being centered is
you need that
good.
anchor.
Yeah. He's very good, Mark. Good
Jim
points.
Carrey.
Fucking awesome. Yeah.
Did you have any other points you wanted to make?
I wanted to talk about Mr. Bungle for a bit, but that was about it.
What's your Mr. Bungle point? Let's end on Mr. Bungle.
It's a very quickly, but that's the Jim Carrey chat, and that was really great. I really liked that. It was really fun. Thanks,
it helped me. It's like, yeah, man.
It's so just like, it's so everything, everywhere that I've come as a performer started there. Like, there's just no question about it. It's such a clear spark and such a clear reference point for me. But the thing I wanted to bring up was just in terms of like my other comedy influences. Another thing that came up when I was trying to think about, what was something that really influenced me right at the start, was when I was like 14. I heard Mr. Bungle for the first time. I heard their first album, their self-titled album, and it introduced to me the idea of complete juxtaposition, right? And the idea of something so serious having a layer of like fucked comedy over the top of it. Because they have songs on that album, like that album is just like a rock, at its core it's just like a rock album. But then they introduce a layer of clown music or like circus music. And then on top of that, they have like really fucked weird lyrics. Like one of my favorite songs is just about a guy's dead dog. And then there's another song about fucking that has fast food references in it. called Squeeze My Macaroni. And I remember hearing that for the first time and like loving it as a piece of music and loving it so much as a genuine piece of music, but laughing at the ideas behind it, but it not being comedy. You know, like it wasn't Weird Al Yankovic, which is a comedy song. It wasn't an Adam Sandler song, which is like a song that has comedy in it. It was serious music at the forefront, but it had this core of like, it had like a wink behind it. It had like this sense of humor to it. And the reason I like Tim and Eric is because I was introduced to Mr. Bungle. Like like for me, like those things were, because Tim and Eric we've spoken about a lot of times, and that would have been my first gut instinct to talk about. One of my biggest comedy influences was Tim and Eric. And when I was thinking about Tim and Eric, I was like, Tim and Eric is the visual comedic version of Mr. Bungle, of what Mr. Bungle is to music. Tim and Eric do visually. And I just thought that was interesting. I was like, when I was thinking about it, I was like, fuck, Mr. Bungle actually had a huge influence on my comedic voice in terms of what is possible, you know, and what I like, which is like just fuckedness, but fuckedness and heightenedness around something that's quite grounded, you know, because heightenedness doesn't work on its own in comedy, I think, because then what you end up with is like Noel Fielding's luxury comedy, which I know a lot of people like, and that's fine, but it never clicked to me as much as the Mighty Boosh did, because there's always just something anchoring it all. There's always something, you know, just the foundations are quite strong. And that was the thing about Mr. Bungle. Great musicians, great songwriters, kind of almost taking the piss out of rock music, but still doing something very serious that they care and they give a fuck about.
With a very thorough knowledge of the structures and stuff. It's very, absolutely. Know the structures really well to break the structures.
To break them and bend them. Yeah, that was it. Great. That's all I had to say.
Full stop. Well, that was good. We'll come back next month with something new. But in the meantime, stay tuned. We're going to be making some big changes to the podcast as of next Wednesday. Whatever the fuck it is, like it'll be early September. There's going to be some cool changes coming. Thank you for those who gave me feedback on the Saturday morning podcast. That'll be cool to do. We've got an idea for that we'll start doing soon once some things open up for us. Thank you, Mark, for Jim Carrey.
Thank you, Mark. And just on the changes, that like there are going to be some changes coming to the Patreon as well. Not changes, just we're going to, now that we've finished up on our comedy influences, we're going to check back in and change up what we do here. And so I might ask soon in the comments about any ideas and stuff. So jump on that Patreon page and check and let us know as we go.
Fuck yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.